had been someone else before the war, before 23 years of service and 2 tours in Vietnam had changed him. Maybe he was cool and fun-loving, like some of the young soldiers I help now. But I would never know that unless I asked him.
Blind, I completed over 50 marathons, cycled across America and Europe, summited Mount Kilimanjaro, and I fathered my 6-year-old daughter.
I never thought about my own mortality. I never thought about what would happen when I deployed. I just, I'd go and I'd come back. But now I stood to lose something. And more importantly, my deployment could leave my sons without a mom.
John survived Afghanistan. He then died in 5 feet of water in Hawaii. And I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but I know that it's wrong because that's not how soldiers are supposed to go.
She deployed more than 5 times in the course of her 21-year military career, serving as a combat medic in Iraq and Afghanistan. She's also the wife of a retired Special Forces Green Beret and the mother of 3 sons, including an infantryman in the 82nd Airborne Division. She currently serves as Director of Operations for the Global War on Terror Memorial Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sergeant First Class Kelly Rodriguez.
Hi, good morning. As you heard, mine is a veteran's story, but it's also a daughter's story, a wife's story, and to me, most importantly, a mom's story. I don't come from a military family like my son does. I grew up south of Buffalo, definitely not a military community. I just wanted to get away, and that's what made me join the Army and go on an adventure. And 6 months later, I found myself in Bosnia, a country I really knew nothing about, on a peacekeeping mission. It was my first deployment, and on that deployment, I was like, I can do this. I liked the Army. I liked being away. I liked doing fun things. So what I remember the most about that deployment, because I was private, there's a lot of guard duty, is my mom. She was always so nervous. I would call her every 2 weeks, stand in line, give the operator my information, and they track my calls, and she just was just worried. She would send me care packages, right? And I was like, Mom, it's a peacekeeping mission. What am I doing here? It's going to be okay. But it didn't matter. Care packages all the time. A couple years later, a few more deployments later, I was presented with an opportunity to go to Afghanistan doing a really new mission. This is before female engagement teams and civil support teams. And the senior medic from 7th Special Forces Group came to my brigade, the 44th Medical Brigade, and looked for a female medic with combat experience to go downrange and, do what male operators can't do, like interrogate females or, search females, medically treat females. So that's what I was doing, and I was so excited. Not even just because it was a new mission, it's just like another deployment. I was just excited to go do my job. So that would have been my 4th deployment total, my 2nd combat tour, and when given the opportunity, I didn't even give it a second thought. I just imagined my brigade sergeant major telling me no. I would have been angry. I'm like, why can't I? And I tell you all that because my views of deployments changed over the years, but that particular deployment, here it is again, my 4th, my mom was still worried. I'm actually in combat for the 2nd time, and I think she got really used to me being gone because I didn't get as many care packages. But one day I did, and I was excited, like, what is it? And I opened it up, and it was a bag of brown hair ties. And I was like, that's it? And I called her, I'm like, Mom. She's like, you said you needed brown hair ties. I'm like, not even a note? I'm like, she's really way used to me being gone. So just changed how she saw things. So, that was the first half of my career. Always excited to go do something. Had always been a medic. Thought I was doing something good. And then my last Afghan tour was 2009 and 2010. I did volunteer for that one. I was working at the brigade headquarters, and I had heard that one of the forward surgical teams needed a medical NCO to deploy. And it was a sergeant's position. And I was a staff sergeant. And I was like, well, I want to go. And they're like, well, they're looking for a sergeant. I'm like, I've got experience. They're going to be a split team. They need experience. And so they let me go. And I was excited about it. But this time it was different. Even though I was going to be there doing exactly what I wanted, real life-saving in my mind, damage control surgery, this time I was not just a daughter. Now I was a wife. And I was a mom. Yeah, for the first time, I was leaving somebody behind. And it wasn't so exciting getting on the bus. I never thought about my own mortality. I never thought about what would happen when I deployed. I just, I'd go and I'd come back. But now, thanks to my incredible husband, I had been blessed with 3 sons. He was a single father. I got to do motherhood the right way all at once. I loved it. But now I stood to lose something. And more importantly, my deployment could leave my sons without a mom. And yeah, that really hit me. And I remember standing outside of our the hangar where we had our deployment ceremony. The bus is behind me, and my husband's there, and I got my kids. And man, I was having a really hard time getting on that bus. And this is from somebody who was like volunteered for deployments, volunteered for that deployment, but it was just so different. And my oldest son, Antonio, and then my middle one, Diego, they were like, Mom, we're good, hugs, kisses. It was nothing to them. They were so strong and so stoic because, they had seen Dad deploy countless times. He was a Green Beret, so, he was always going somewhere, right? My little one, he was only 2.5. He obviously knew I was going someplace. He had no idea where, and if he did, it wouldn't have meant anything. And he really didn't know that I'd be gone for a year. So he was sad, but that's just like me going to Walmart when he's 2 years old. He's like, I want to go with Mom. But he didn't get it. My husband, on the other hand, did. He was still on active duty. Now he's staying home with these 3 boys. He knew exactly where I was going. And he was strong enough for both of us. And with his strength, I was able to get on that bus and do my job. I remember him telling me that he and the boys loved me, and they supported me, and that everything would be fine. And I think I knew he was right. Turns out he was. I came home. But it was so hard getting on that bus to leave my family. And the whole ride to Baltimore, because we didn't just get on a plane, we got to Baltimore to get on a plane, all I kept thinking is, this is going to be the hardest deployment ever. Just a few months into that deployment, one of the hardest things I ever had to do was treat a traumatically injured female soldier, American. Now, again, this is my 5th deployment at this point, and I'd never treated an American woman before. Never even thought about, how is that different? Well, it was. And Sergeant Wolf didn't survive. In fact, we never even made it out of the trauma bay into the operating room with her. Her convoy had been hit by an IED between Jalalabad and my fire base in Nuray, which is on the northeastern border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. My understanding that the reason she was even on that convoy was because her husband, Sergeant Wolf, was stationed at my fire base. And he was scheduled to push out to one of the combat outposts. And so this was a Cav unit that ran our fire base, and so he'd be gone for about 30 days. So Sergeant Wolf, being a good wife, was like, send me out there, I want to say goodbye to my husband. And she didn't get to. And even knowing that, I look back and would I have done the same thing if my husband had been in country? And yeah, I think I would have. And so here I was again, a few months later, being faced with my own mortality again. And it's just something that was so new to me, and it was really, I guess I just never would have expected to feel that way. But it is what it is. Well, the rest of that deployment was pretty tough. It was 2009, 2010. That year we dealt with a lot up in the Kunar Valley. Cop Keating, Battle of Kamdesh was that year. We got all those casualties. But overall, I was safer there than I had ever been on any other deployment. I stayed inside the wire. I didn't go on convoys every 4 or 5 times a week. I wasn't on a helicopter 2 or 3 times a month. We really didn't even get any real direct fire. We'd get indirect fire from time to time. It really was pretty safe. It was the deployment that stays with me the most in here and in here, for sure. But it wasn't my hardest deployment. My hardest deployment was last year. So last June 15th, I had my retirement ceremony, and I retired in September. But 2 weeks after that, on June 26th, our oldest son, Antonio, deployed with 1st Brigade Combat Team, 82nd, the White Devils. Watching him walk away from us towards his bus, the same bus that I got on, right, years before, carrying his 240 and his Molly, all I saw was a little boy. I saw a little 10-year-old walking away. I mean, he was 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, paratrooper in 82nd, right? But to me, he was just a little boy. And I just, I think back to the time I had to leave him and his brothers and my husband for the first time, and that was hard. But watching him, it was just a whole different thing, I knew he was well-trained, he was in 82nd. If he's got to deploy, I'd rather it was with 82nd than anybody else. I mean, that's just me. Maybe it's my own little airborne Kool-Aid that I like to drink, right? But he was doing exactly what he wanted to do from the time he was 10 years old. He was going to be a soldier. He joined the Army with a war going on, not like me. I joined in 1996, had no idea what was going on in the world. He knew he would go to war. He chose to be an infantryman. He chose to be a paratrooper. I didn't become a paratrooper until I was in my 30s. But we both knew that that was a possibility. And that is when I realized how jealous I was of my mother's ignorance and naivety as far as the military. Here she was worried about me in Bosnia like something was going to really happen. And she's just being a mom, It was hard for me to just be a mom because, unlike my mom, I knew exactly where my son was going. I knew what it meant when he said, I'm going to Helmand Province. I know what Helmand Province means. It's not Bagram. It's not Kandahar, I knew exactly what he'd be doing there. I knew the risks and I knew the possibilities. And I know all of that, not because I'd ever been a young infantryman in Afghanistan, but because I treated hundreds of them. I assisted in surgery trying to save the lives of hundreds of young men like my son. And the sad truth is I know not all injured soldiers come home. Not all lives get saved. Fortunately for me and for my family, my son did come home, and he is a dad now, and that's amazing, and we're incredibly proud of him. Doesn't change the fact that that was my hardest deployment. So throughout my 21-year career, I had so many opportunities. I deployed as a private and as an NCO, mechanized units, airborne and special operations units. I did peacekeeping, and I did war combat, right? Deployed as a daughter and sister and a wife and a mom. My hardest deployment is the one I couldn't go on. It's the one where I had to stay home and watch him go. And I wouldn't change it I don't think he has any intention of getting out, so I'll probably have to do it again, right? But whatever he chooses to do, we'll support it. He's a great American, he's a great patriot. All three of my kids are. I mean, even my one in middle school, and I got one in college, and they're just great kids, great citizens. And I couldn't be more proud. What I'd like to share to me that is important, though, is that I'm not the only mom that's watched her kid deploy. My husband's not the only man that's watched his wife deploy, and vice versa. And ours is not the only family that's had 3 people serve in the same war. It happens a lot, and it happens a lot in this community. And we're not special, we're certainly not unique. We're part of the fabric of this country. Doesn't make it easy, though. So that's my story of wife, mom, veteran, soldier. Thanks.